Hi, everybody. Welcome, iSpark family. I'm Coach Lynn, for those of you that don't already know me. I've had the privilege of being the Indigenous RunWalk coach for many, many years, and it's my privilege to be able to facilitate this wonderful upcoming webinar series beginning today and presented by iSpark, entitled Moving Forward is the series, and today, of course, is Our New Future. It's not been an easy time for anyone these last number of weeks, but I hope this finds you feeling safe, doing your best to stay strong and active and supportive and cautiously optimistic, I'm hoping, as this COVID curve seems to be flattening a little bit now across the country, and we're having to face what our new norm is. And attached to that, of course, are many, many concerns. And that's why we have this webinar series beginning today with Our New Future. We're so glad you could take the time to be here today. And we know, we were discussing earlier, we've all been doing Fit Nation, RunWalk, Pound, and trying to stay active. And and still, all of those things helping with the challenges that we face, there are many more challenges as we do move forward. So it is also, of course, a privilege that I have here now, and wonderful to be able to introduce our presenter for this webinar series moving forward. It is, of course, Dr. Lisa Gunderson. She is of One Love and a creator of One Love Consulting. She's a BC registered clinical counselor and California licensed clinical psychologist. And she's already been a part of our iSpark family on many, many occasions, including leader training. And those of you know, if you've managed to join us over the last few circle times over lunchtime and another couple of webinars. Hello, Lisa, Dr. G. Thank you for being here today. And now, before we begin, to start us off in a really wonderful way, a good way, the very best way, I'm of course honored to introduce a very, very special honored member of the iSpark family, who's certainly reached all our hearts and mine with his wise wisdom and words over many, many years. He has had and has many roles, also happens to be a runner, Fit Nation leader, and avid sportsman. Please welcome Gerry Oleman. Hi, Gerry.
Hello. So good to see you, Lynn.
Good to see you.
Oh my gosh, Lynn, you always stay the same. I think I got to talk to that lady sometime and find out what her secret is. Anyway, I'd just like to invite everybody to take a deep breath. Hold it. Exhale through the mouth slowly. Take another deep breath. Hold it. Exhale. Take a deep breath. Fill yourself right up. Exhale. One more time. Hold it. Exhale. You know that breathing, sometimes I imagine the first breath I took, and I left my mother's body because she done all the breathing for me. She done everything for me. And how I had to fight for oxygen and clear my lungs and breathe. And it's something that I appreciate today, and they call it, some people call it the breath of life, because we cannot exist without that oxygen or water or heat. And in the mother's womb, we were in that world. So I'd just like to open this webinar by acknowledging, first off, I'm in Brandon, Manitoba, and the Uchelmiuk, the original people that were here before our visitors from Europe came, were the Dakota, Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, and Métis peoples. Well, Métis started after the contact, of course, but this is, I acknowledge their territory now, you know, because they're Uchelmiuch, which means, Ul in my language means original. And Miuch comes from the word Tamiuch, and Tamiuch is the planet Earth. So I just like to acknowledge those ones that lived here for thousands of years. Sometimes I imagine them walking on these prairies and living here. And I'm grateful for them for keeping it in such a state that I can survive here today, that I can live here. So I'd like to start this off with my song from the Hummingbird, you know, about Thanksgiving. You've heard me, some of you sing this song before, but for the sake of the ones that haven't, I'll just do a little explanation. In my language, Kukstumkau means to thank you. And Quilsh refers to what holds it all together. Some people would use the term God or creator, but in the dialect, it literally means what holds everything together, which is part of our foundation of our belief on interconnectedness, how we all need each other to survive. So I'm going to give thanksgiving to the Quilsh for the Timiuch, which is Mother Earth, which provides everything we need, everything that we have to survive as a human being. Oxygen from the green trees, water coming out of the earth, you know, and medicines, clothing, everything we have. And when I say Timiuch, when you're listening, I encourage you to visit a place that has special meaning for you, that has brought healing for you, or a sense of groundedness, being grounded to Mother Earth. And there are many places like that for me. Sometimes it's on the water, sometimes it's on top of a mountain or in the desert, because I've had the good fortune to travel in quite a few places on Mother Earth. And the second part of the song is again to say Kukstum Kau Quilsh and Shnuknukwa. And those are all your friends and relatives. And the reference in this one is the ones that carried you when you were a baby. Because without that, we wouldn't be here today. Someone had to carry us. So give thanksgiving for your friends and for your relatives when you hear in Shnuknukwa. I la la 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 I love you. Ayo yo ayo yo ayo yo ayo yo yo ayo yo ayo yo ayo yo yo Kukstum Kau Quilsh Gal Tamiuch I love yo yo Gal Tamiuch I love yo yo ayo yo ayo yo ayo yo ayo yo yo ayo yo ayo yo ayo yo 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 Kukstum Kau Quilsh and Shnuknukwa I la I love you. I love you. Oh yo yo. Oh yo yo. Oh yo yo. Oh yo yo yo. Oh yo yo oh. Oh yo yo oh yo yo yo. I la la, I la la, I la la, I la la, I love you. I la la, 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 I love you. Ay yo yo, ay yo yo, ay yo yo, ay yo yo, ay yo yo. Ay yo yo, ay yo yo, ay yo yo, oh. Ay yo yo, ay yo yo, ay yo yo, ay yo. Woo-hee. Our gift from the hummingbird. You know, there's words that come to me as I say, huishtwi and shnuknukwa, stuchumwi and shnuknukwa. And it means, let's go, my friends and relatives, let's move. And while we're moving, let's be alert, let's be careful. That's stuchum, to be alert, to take care. We means all of us. Let's move together. And I thought I'd say that at the start of this moving forward webinar. And I'd like to thank Susan for calling me to share with you and also to learn with you and to grow with you. So thank you, Susan, and thank you, Lynn, for such a gracious introduction. You know, and my wife said, you got to stop listening to those people that talk about how good you are, because my head's getting too big and I have a hard time to find hats that fit my head. Anyway, thank you. So I'm looking forward to listening. And I'm a student. We're all students. The student means a consistent observer, someone that watches and listens when the speaker is speaking to us. When the one that's got the teachings comes to share those teachings and lays them at our feet, we're to become students. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I guess we can get started, Dr. G. And I should say this is the start of the series, everybody. Remember, today's Webinar Wednesday, so we've got 2 more after today. And here we have the agenda for getting us started.
Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I also want to just take a moment and acknowledge where I have the honor of living and working as well. And I live on the lands of the Songhees, Lekwungen, the Esquimalt, and the Wasanich peoples here in Victoria. And today, kind of our plan is to do just kind of a brief introduction into this idea of moving forward and what's going to be, as we go forward, what's new. And we're going to spend just a few moments talking about a few of the questions that you all actually sent to us. And after that, we're just going to open it up and just have a dialogue with everybody. And we are going to start with what calling going back to normal, and then what our new future looks like. How does that sound? Does that sound okay? Yep. Is that okay? So one of the things, and I'm noticing, I think I'm going to try to figure out how to minimize. There we go. So you can see that better. One of the things that I hear a lot of people say is that they want to get back to normal. When we get back to normal, everything is going to be better. When we get back to normal, everything is going to feel better. And one of the suggestions I would make is for people to take that back to normal kind of out of their vocabulary. There is no going back to normal. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about what's kind of a little bit of the danger of that. But what we are now is just in life. And we're in a new present and a new future. And when we have in our heads so much that we want to get back to normal, when we actually are re-entering into spaces and they're not as they were, it can lead to an increased sense of anxiety and sadness and depression and mourning for the way things used to be. And when people are consistently just thinking back, it's hard to stay present and to think about kind of the new future. Does that kind of make sense, Lynn, what I'm saying?
Oh, it does. So many things come to mind. In our communities, I know we're experiencing all kinds of just differences in how we view what's happening and what our comfort zones are within our own households, within our neighborhood, you know, and there are things happening that I find myself, you know, evolving and growing and thinking and changing and feeling at the same time nervous, happy, scared, and sometimes a little, do I dare say, angry, because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm feeling unsafe.
Yes,
so,
yes. And we're going to be talking about those kind of feelings that you were just mentioning there. I want to liken this idea of what I'm saying to two things. You'll see on your screen, it says a positive mindset and you must bring your mind to your condition. Some of you may have heard me say that phrase before. It's something my father would say to me when I was in a situation and I wasn't quite sure how to kind of manage that. And he would say to me, you know, Lisa, my dad was Jamaican, for those of you who don't know. So when I start to talk about my history, that's Patois is my first language. So he says, you know, you must bring your mind to your condition. You know, you have to bring your mind to where you are now, because that's going to allow you to do what you need to do and allow you to share the gifts that you have, allow you to move in this new space in a way that's going to be healthy and positive for you. And that positive mindset about how we're re-entering into this new future is going to be so paramount, because it allows you to have a sense of control where there may feel like there is none. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I like to liken it a little bit to my son on Monday turned 18. And it was his 18th birthday and our 19th anniversary. That we had nothing better to do than to have a child on our anniversary. And I'm looking at this young person and I'm trying to read him this birthday poem, and I just start crying because I remember when, like, that moment that he was born. And at every stage that he was growing, people would say to me, are you missing the fact that he's not a baby anymore? You know? And I said, yeah, you know, I do miss that a little bit, but I'm really excited about the fact that he's crawling now. And then he started crawling, and then they're like, do you miss the fact he starts walking? Do you miss the fact when he was crawling? Yeah, but I do, but I don't want to go back because I'm loving what he's doing right now. And it's that same kind of thing. And do I miss him at 10 and 12 and 14? And there's parts of that I miss, but I absolutely enjoy and am loving who he's becoming and wanting to be part of that. Because if I just stayed stuck with him at 2 or stuck with him at 4 or stuck with him at 6, I wouldn't be able to see this beautiful person that he's evolving into and being. And so I can look fondly back on those years, and parts of me are sad at times, but I am so joyful and happy for what I see in front of me in the present and what he's becoming. And so I think about that as an analogy to what we are coming through, that there's definitely things that I am going to miss. But what is coming and what we're in right now, it creates a new possibility of, ironically, closeness and intimacy and being able to do things differently. I hope that kind of makes sense, that mindset that I was explaining. Yeah, Lynn, please.
It does, of course it does, but I think also what happens are those flip side emotions that come into play. We want to be positive. How do we deal with the things that aren't maybe so positive, or the sort of some of the things that aren't so kind that are happening, and then the fear amidst that? How do we stay there in the positive zone?
Exactly. And here's the first part: we don't stay in the positive zone. So I don't know if you've met people before who are so positive all the time, like 100% of the time, like nothing can go wrong ever. That's not the kind of positivity I'm talking about, because part of positivity is having different types of emotions that don't necessarily feel good, that's just part of life. That's part of how everything exists, right? It's not, I'd be worried if you were happy 100% of the time, right? And it's like, again, being a parent in my case, I love my children, like them, but there are times that they're jumping on that last nerve. There are times I'm just like, oh no, it's not all good. And especially as we're in this period of time, as we talked about in our lunch, that the majority of people are feeling scared. They are feeling uncertain. They're feeling anxious. They're feeling depressed. One of the things that we had mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to reiterate today, as we are re-entering the community and the questions that were asked, how can I manage my feelings of fear re-entering the community? First, acknowledge again these thoughts. It's okay not to feel okay. It is okay to feel scared and uncertain and anxious. Remember, first and foremost, you are not alone. Nobody who is going through this, no matter how it may appear, has got the handle on this. You are not alone. And second, and I'll be mentioning this a couple times, it's never a sign of weakness to reach out for help, whether that's to a friend, a family member, somebody in the community, whether it's a more formal type of service that you need. But if you're feeling a certain way, to acknowledge that, to be able to call somebody and just be able to talk to them. One of the biggest things, the biggest fears about re-entering the community is the fact that there's so much that we don't know. And we're not sure from day to day what we're going to be allowed to do, what's going to be happening, what's going on. And if you remember, part of what creates that level of anxiety and sometimes sadness is that fear of the unknown, not being able to control things, right? Well, one of the things, and I bolded it here, is to remember that you cannot be 100% sure. As you're going into community, it seems like people want to know for a fact, I'm not going to get this. Mm-hmm. Everything's going to be clean. It's going to be all right. I'm only going to go to places where I know I won't possibly get sick. You cannot be 100% sure. You can just do the best that you can do. And so as you're re-entering spaces, you cannot get down on yourself for the choices that you're going to make. You have to remember that there is no 100%, and then that's okay, right? Like, you're going to try to do the best that you can do. And in the next slide, we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But I think people need to recognize that you are going to have these feelings. Mm-hmm. You can't wait till those go away for you to re-enter. That's not going to happen, right? It's like sport. You are an athlete. You know what it feels like right before a race. You have maybe that little bit of nervousness, energy. You're like a little bit not quite sure, but you still power forward. The gun, in my case, the gun goes off and I go, right? I can't just sit there and go, oh, what if, what if, what if, what if?
Mm-hmm.
That's not how we move forward. Does that make sense?
It does. It's helpful to be able to express oneself in such a way to acknowledge how one may be feeling. So in other words, even within the household, you know, with kids, you talk about kids, I've got all my kids home and I can say, I'm not comfortable with what's happening here.
Yes,
Let's
absolutely.
talk about this, you know?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that. A friend of mine just said to me the other day, she has a 14-year-old who is ready to re-enter. He wanted to go play wiffle ball. A friend of his had created a safe kind of wiffle ball experience, and she wasn't feeling that the way they did it was going to be safe enough. And he's like, Mom, please. And she said, you know, I want you to understand, I understand that you want to go, but I'm not comfortable yet. And I need you to have just a little bit more patience with me. The time will come, but I need you to have a little bit more patience for me. And they were, and she was able to voice that. And that was something that he was able to kind of take in and understand. Mm-hmm. And they were able to kind of move forward with that. Something that was said earlier about being alert and being careful and moving together. And part of how you deal again with these feelings that you have, I say the 4 F's: faith, family, friends, and fun. So what I mean by this is when I say faith, whatever source that you derive from keeping your spirit healthy, right? Because we are mind, body, spirit, right? Whatever that is for you, that's a good source, a good well to draw from when you have feelings of fear or nervousness. In my case, there is a saying that my father gave me one day, and it was on something, is that in my case, God won't take you where he can't keep you, right? And I just kind of run that through my head when I'm in situations where I'm uncertain, I'm not sure, I'm a little bit scared. It's like, remember, you're not being put anywhere where you can't handle it.
I wonder whose phone is that, Mike?
It's mine. It's mine.
Mike didn't.
Somebody's giving me a message. Here, I'll put it on mute.
Oh, there we go.
Second is family. Aunts, uncles, what they may call fictive kin, you know, they don't necessarily are blood relatives, but they are family. Whoever you trust, whoever you rely on, who you just makes you feel at home. Rely on those people with these feelings that you have. Talk to them. Have a tea with them, or whatever it is that you do, whether that's over this way or, you know, if they're in your bubble. Same thing for your friends. And we cannot underestimate fun. It's one of the best antidotes to all of this is literally smiling, you know, listening to a story, there's literally videos of people just laughing. And there is physiological change in your body when you smile and when you laugh and you just have fun. So whatever makes you feel good, if it's just dancing in your room, if it's singing off key, if it's playing a game with, you know, somebody in your family, whatever that is, because you can stop to have fun. You can forget to have fun in this kind of situation. Even if you don't really feel like it, trying to do that, those things, faith, family, friends, and fun, those are the things that are going to help you also manage those feelings that you may have of fear of re-entering the community. Lynn, does that? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, oh, it's so helpful to feel centered, like to find that place where you are grounded. And I think I need Gerry to please sing me that song every day.
Did you, I don't know about you, but when he was the drumming, I just closed my eyes and I could literally feel it in my spirit. That's what, for me, certain types of music and so forth does for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just has this kind of calming presence. And how he asked us to take a breath,
Mm-hmm.
just even in that moment, to take a breath, what that is like. Right? It centers you.
Yes.
Another question that we have, and Lynn, I'm going to ask you because I can't see the time. Can you please tell me what the time is? Because I want to make sure that we are going to be talking with people today.
Sure. Well, I'll keep an eye. It is 12:35-ish
Perfect.
now, so we're good.
So one of the other questions that we had is, how can I safely re-enter, feel safe going back to work and starting my activities again? How do I re-enter in that space safely? All right, this first one is going to be interesting because I think it works in both ways. It's the science. We have to trust in many ways what the health professionals are telling us in terms of the science. The reason why I say it's working in both ways, it seems like some days they're telling us to wear a mask and other days they're telling us not to wear a mask. And then some days wear gloves, and then another day I don't want to wear gloves. So then that can actually heighten people's levels of uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
right? I go to the store, do I wear the mask or don't I wear the mask? Now I'm walking in the store and I'm in a mask, but other people aren't in a mask. And I'm like, and we'll talk about that in a second. Like, are they right? Am I right? You know, it can be very kind of, I think, confusing. The best that you can understand it is the best that you can do. And one of the recommendations would be to find a consistent source that you trust, and try to go with that. So if it's listening to the health authority or going to a certain web page that you go to that you trust and you're able to read it and understand it, that's the best that you can do. I would caution you to doing news overload, which is looking at 2 hours worth of information from 25 different sources that seem to be contradicting each other. You really need to limit your intake in terms of how much information you're putting in your mind and who you're getting your information from. And I've mentioned this before, really not trying to start your day that way, trying not to end your day that way. But, and literally for some of you, maybe needing to put a timer on when you start looking at the information in the news, because we can go down that rabbit hole. Oh, let me click. Oh, that's interesting. Let me click here. Now I'm in Ontario. Oh, that's happening in Quebec. Oh, let me click here. And then before you know it, you're all over the place. I think it's really important that you find a source that you can trust. And even then, the other day when it's like, are we allowed to start the pods again? I have a friend who's in the medical community and I really trust her and I trust how she looks at things. So I just called her and just was like, can you tell me, like, what are you going to do? And she's like, I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with that. And I'm good with that.
Sure.
Right.
Again, it comes to what our comfort levels are, maybe with the people that are around us. And there is a comment out there that the BC COVID app is a great one for factual information.
Excellent.
So thank you, Courtney, for that.
Thank you.
Just even so you know, there are a number of comments from our participants today around anxiety and the fact that our new normal is never going to really be normal again. And that's what whatever that means is what you're speaking to.
Exactly. If we could keep track of some of the resources that people are recommending, and after this, we can send an email with those links, that would be great, because that kind of leads to this next piece where I'm saying trust your SISTAS. You know, we all have people in our world that we trust, and getting information, getting ideas and links, lean into that. That is going to be really important. And you are that for others as well, especially in the roles that many of you play. And so being able to create that also is a way to decrease anxiety for people. I had less anxiety once I've talked to my friend, because I truly trust her. And if I also remember in my head that I can't be 100% guaranteed or sure, right? I just have to walk in that trust. I have to walk in that space. And that's what's going to be helpful. The other part is accepting that you're going to have to readjust. I was at the doctor yesterday. I have a problem with my shoulder, and they were giving me some shots. And one of the things he said to me is, he goes, you remember being an athlete when you were in high school? He goes, well, your body, I'm almost 50. He goes, it's not that body anymore. And it's still a healthy body. But he's like, you know, the activities that you were doing, he literally said, your body starts to break down. And he goes, you are still going to be able to be active, but you're going to have to adjust what it is that you've done. And so in the past, if I used to play racquetball, I can't do that anymore. I have to find a different way. Even when I'm exercising, he's like, I can't go out this way, but I'm allowed to, that hurt, but I'm allowed to go this way. And so this is akin to what we need to do in terms of going safely back to our activities and work, is recognizing that some of the activities that you enjoyed right now, you're not going to be able to go back to them. That you need to readjust and figure out maybe how you can modify it, or you're going to be looking to doing something different. And so talking to friends who engaged in those activities with you and finding out how to readjust that becomes important. Both my boys are basketball players. And right now, that is not going to be something pretty in the near future that they're going to be able to engage in the way that they did. So there's questions now about what pieces of that can they engage in? What other things can they do? And we're going to have to think about that, become creative, put feelers out there and see what's happening. But there is a bit of mourning my old self in that I can't do certain activities, but I'm also excited about new ways that I'm going to be able to engage my body and my mind. Does that make sense?
It does. We're truly just rejigging our focus.
Absolutely.
It's still very positive in that we can do things. We just have to adjust how we do them.
Exactly. And it's accepting that. It's the plan B's, C's, and D's. People talk about a plan B, but I think it doesn't hurt to have a plan C, D, and E in this situation, because one thing I can guarantee you all is that it's not going to just stay this way, right? There's likely going to be some piece where we're going to be going back to maybe making a choice to keep ourselves and our family safe, which may be having us go back into some sort of quarantine at some point, possibly. So having plans for that is helpful. And if we don't go back, great. But if we do, we're kind of ready for that. And being proactive in that way is, again, an antidote to things like anxiety and stress and feeling depressed. One of the questions that somebody asks is, how do we deal with somebody who is not wanting to do any of these measures, right? Like, how do I deal with somebody who's not going to do that? And I titled this, Yeah, You Can't. I mean, what can you do with this person? It's kind of like, how do you deal with that? And that famous AA saying of, you accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You really need to think about what is in your control to do. We can't control other people. That is not something we can do. I am going to give you some specific suggestions of things you can do for people who are not following protocol in a moment, but there's no guarantee that that's going to work, right? And I will also speak to feelings of anger and resentment around that. But I think just in general, we need to recognize that we can't control other people. We can influence and we can try to give suggestions, but at the end of the day, we can't force people to do what we want them to do. And I think just sometimes understanding that is a good springboard to, okay, I'm going to try my best, but if it doesn't work out, then I need to just do what I can do to keep my family safe, keep my community safe, and try to remember what's in my control.
These things, those sorts of, I suppose, possible situations create this conflict, which we like to avoid or want to avoid. Some don't. Some people like conflict, and that also in itself it can be difficult to manage.
Yeah. So what can we do? We have people who, we just had this long weekend. I have a friend who lives near the beach. She called me, she goes, you wouldn't believe how many people are out here not physically distancing, just doing a lot of different things, you know, what's happening. So we heard that, you know, we are in this together. And the first piece is when you see somebody engaging in behavior that you think is unsafe, is what are the thoughts that you have going through your mind? And I mentioned this a bit in our lunch piece, is that sometimes we make assumptions and we may not be correct in those assumptions. Somebody in this article I'm going to recommend was talking about a person who was not maintaining that 6-foot distance, and it was upsetting another person. It turns out that that person actually had no sight, and that wasn't maintaining that space properly due to that. And that's where somebody else can maintain that space, right? Like you're not sure what's necessarily going on with people as to why they may or may not be engaging in certain protocol. So one of the things is to kind of begin with, don't just assume, for example, that everyone knows. It is confusing. So that person not wearing a mask, is it because they know they should and they are choosing not to? Or maybe what they're reading says they're not supposed to, and that's why they're not doing it, right? We're not sure. You can't assume everyone just knows what they're supposed to do. And so part of the way that you can manage that is kind of focusing on yourself and kind of engaging in a conversation about what you're doing. So for example, if somebody is not maintaining the 6-foot space, I could choose to get upset about that, or I could say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to be backing up because we need to maintain a 6-foot space. And I want to just keep us both safe. I'm not yelling at anybody. I'm not screaming at anybody. I'm not giving attitude. I'm creating a safety zone while also explaining what I'm doing. And that's keeping a harmonious balance as well, right? So now I'm feeling better. I am engaging with somebody, but not in an antagonizing way. And that tends to be helpful. People don't like being yelled at, screamed at, stared at. We're not interested in that. I'm going to be sending everybody a link. This is a pretty good article. It came out of Time magazine, so it's a little US based, but back in April. And they interviewed a variety of different experts on how to handle people who are violating protocols. What can you do? And one of the suggestions that was given by Dr. Monica Schoch Spana, she's a medical anthropologist. One of the conditions, the literature showed that people will change their behavior if there are 3 conditions in place: that they know what to do, why to do it, and they see other people like themselves also doing it. So we don't want to, this article is actually called Standing Too Close, Not Covering Coughs. If someone is violating social distancing rules, what do you do? So it's going to give you some examples. And one of the things to remember is you're a model for people as well. So if you're engaging in those behaviors, it's likely to also be helpful as well. One of the things they talk about in this is you have every right to try and correct the behavior, but you need to try to do so politely with knowledge sharing and positive modeling. What if none of that works? They're just violating in many ways. It's really important for you to know the complaint procedures within your own community and within your larger spaces. And if you're able to influence, it's great to have anonymous ways to do that. That's really helpful for people. If you feel like people are putting others at risk, you know, how we can have ways to make that known is important. And so within each of our communities, it's important for you all to have ways of making that information known to the people who would need to be able to know that, who would have authority with that. I would not encourage anybody getting into it. Like you said, some people like to argue. I really would not encourage that, because you can't control what could happen there. And we don't want any kind of physical altercations.
No, just like Dr. Bonnie Henry has said on so consistently, if we can try to find a way to be kind in the way that we express ourselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you learn about conflict management too, they're just, sometimes it just, you can't change what people are necessarily doing. So maybe, is it okay? Can we just simply avoid it by doing something different, avoiding that situation maybe, you know?
Absolutely. And some of you are going to have to decide, oh, those are some friends we're not going to hang out with, right? That we're just, those are the people whose homes we're going to politely be busy a lot, you know? And that's okay, because you need to do what you feel is not just safe for you, but it's also what's safe for your community, because you're interacting as well. So definitely, if there's specific examples, I'd like to ask that. Lynn, could you tell me what time it is, please?
We are nearing 12:55 now.
Okay.
We need to talk a little, I guess, with everybody that is on our panel. Our participants here have a few questions.
Yes, let's go ahead and answer some of those questions. And I want to make some suggestions with regard to, at the end of the day, we need to walk in this with, you know, who's the person in the mirror? How do you want to be, right? I tell my son that a lot. Don't allow others' behaviors to influence how you behave. You know, you act the way that you need to, and just be who you need to be. Ask for help. I can't emphasize that enough. If the anxiety, if the depression, if all this stuff that I've talked about, you've tried and this and that, and you're still feeling underwater, you may need to seek a different type of help, whether that be from elders or professionals or someone. It becomes important. And don't forget whose shoulders you're standing on. Sometimes it's helpful to talk to our elders and be reminded of all the things they've gone through and the times they've gone through, and they're here and we're here. And so while this is an absolute unique moment in time, historically, people have gone through these types of things and they've come out the other side, right? And we are going through it, and we will as well. So sometimes it's helpful to remind ourselves that, especially as a racialized person, as an Indigenous person, we have been through so much and are still going through so much, and we're still here, right? So sometimes reminding ourselves of that can be helpful. What questions do we have?
Well, the one stands out here is, and
Yes.
I think we all share in this, is just anxiety in really uncomfortable situations. One of them that is cited here is physically going to the grocery store and having
Yes.
to deal with that. And I totally agree. Here we are trying to go back to, you know, opening up businesses and life at large, and all along we've had to go to this grocery store, some of us, and it's the most unsafe place, arguably, you know, through this whole thing.
Yeah. So a couple things with regard to the grocery store. There's, you know, one extreme, and I won't say extreme, there's different options, right? And some of them may be viable options where you live, some of them may not be. For people who are very, very anxious about that, one suggestion is, depending on how large your household is, pick one person to be the person who goes into the store. And they do all the grocery shopping, so you don't have to be that person. If you have the ability to have home delivery, there's nothing wrong with still engaging in that behavior. I think sometimes people feel like, well, because we're opening up, it means I have to do that. You don't have to do that if you're not ready to do that. So if home delivery is a possibility, or you have friends who go and you can share a list and they can get the groceries for you, if that's something that's possible for you to do, that's another option. The other option is time of day. If you go in the morning, and many times they already have times set aside for certain groups, but I find that early in the morning, or about within an hour of when the store is going to close.
That's me.
Yeah, that's me too. And one of the reasons I do that is I don't want to stand in line. I want to be able to move a little bit more freely through the aisles and not bounce into a bunch of people. I think that the time of day that you go in is going to be important, and which day you go in. And it may take you a little bit of figuring that out to determine that. I also find that, you know, that moment when you're like getting milk and then you see the other person in the corner of your eye, and then there's like 2 other people there, and all of a sudden now you're 5 and you're like, and everybody just, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. It's not going to happen that instantaneously, right? And this is where keeping information in my head, like our numbers are quite low, you know, that I'm not going to get it like that. The odds that somebody is going to have to sneeze right into your face, you know, the odds of certain things, and even like sneezing, and we've seen all the things where it carries over, maybe over aisles or something like that. Masks are still recommended by those sources that I read. And some stores, there's one store in our city in Victoria that mandates masks, and they literally have masks there if you don't have your own. So in your community, if there's a store like that, it's the only store I know of that does that, where the other stores, it's voluntary. That if a store like that, you can get access to, for some of you, that may be worthwhile to drive that extra 5 minutes to that kind of store to feel comfort in knowing that every single person is wearing a mask, and everybody from the shoppers to the people working there. That might be something. But for yourself, again, you don't need to have other people's behavior dictate yours. So if for you, you feel most comfortable wearing a mask, and that's you protecting other people, then engage in that behavior, right? But if it's getting to the point where you are so anxious again that you can't get your food, that you're so overwhelmed by that, that's when I would actually reach out to ask for some help, right?
For sure. I know I'm not always the most organized in terms of food prep and all that, but all of a sudden I've become that way. Just as a suggestion, I go with my list so I can whip through there as quickly as possible and don't miss anything, don't meander through the aisles as I maybe once have done.
And they also suggest, for example, if you're looking at, you know, a product, you know, normally I would pick up and look and then put back and do this kind of picking, just kind of maybe just stare at what you need and then just touch that one thing and bring it back. For those of you who are bringing things back home, some people take a step of wiping things down that they had at the grocery store, maybe opening certain types of containers and putting them in an alternate container. Again, I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. It's just another step. If that will help with your comfort level, that's another step that you can take as well.
Okay. I'm conscious of the time because it is 1 o'clock now. Just maybe one more thought coming through with the comments is, again, it's really about reiterating, I think, what you've talked to, but just the fact that there's an anxiousness around knowing that our normal is never going to be what it once was. So there's a fear around that, and we have to, I know I fight it inside too. So we're not alone with those
Not
feelings.
at all. Not at all. I don't know of times in life where when change happens, that doesn't happen, right? And whether it's you engage in getting involved with a new partner, are we going to make it? Are we not? You know, whether it's moving to a new city, am I going to make friends? Am I going to do this? What if I don't like this area? What can I do? If it's a new job, you know, I think it's important to kind of just sit down for a moment and think about all the different times in your life where things have changed. And I think for many of you, if you do that for a moment, and the times where you've wondered, how am I going to get through this? What am I going to do? And you're still here, so you made it, right? And I don't want to I don't want to come off like, oh, it's, you know, you have an anxiety, just put on a happy face. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I also want people to recognize that the strength in dealing with those feelings is really about your mindset and things. What I said at the very beginning, things are not going to go back, right? We're moving forward. We're moving forward, and we're going to move in a way, and there's some stuff we're not going to like, and we're just going to have to accept some of that. But trying to find new ways to appreciate what's happening, that's where I think a lot of if we could begin to do a little bit of our mindset that way, instead of just sitting with, oh, you remember when and how, and like sitting in that space, that's going to be challenging. And for those of you who have children, that becomes especially important as well, or others around you, because they may be looking to you as to, well, what is school going to look like? How am I going to, you know what, babe? I don't know, but we're going to get through it together. We're going to figure it out together. Some of it you're not going to like, and some of it will be new. We'll figure that out. And it's okay to not know. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to figure out how to be okay, almost like you're on the sea and the waves are moving and you're on this boat, you know, figuring out that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine.
I love, you know, and you said it, took the words out of my heart, even, that what you're speaking to sounds really, it's about life. It's not about this particular situation.
Exactly.
It's
exactly.
And it reminds me of a very wise neighbor that I had when I was growing up, but he would say, wherever there is forward movement, there is bound to be turbulence. And
Absolutely.
to think about that it makes sense. So
absolutely. There is no growth without some sort of push, pull, pain, right? That's part of life, right? And I wanted to mention that I did a lot of parent analogies, because we are opening up schools. Parents are all being asked right now, and those who parent, right, you may be taking care of others, being asked, should I have my child go back to school? Is that something I should do? What is my comfort level around that? How, if I stay at home, how do I deal with my toddlers, especially my toddlers and my teens? Those two groups seem to be the ones that people really have questions about. And so next time we meet, iSpark is going to be presenting this parenting piece, and we're going to be focusing totally on those issues.
Yeah, so that's next week. And just a heads up, the following week after that will be another Moving Forward webinar presented by iSpark that'll be entitled Worry and Anxiety as we move forward. So thanks everybody for being here today and taking the time. We do have, stick here now, we do have a close. Gerry will close for us. I just did want to take words from Gerry that I have read and heard before he speaks, because I love this, Gerry, and you have said that all challenges are man-made, therefore they can be healed and fixed using our traditions and laws that worked for us for thousands of years. Somehow that is grounding.
Lynn, I wanted to say that if anybody has a specific situation or question, to please, that's my phone number, to please give me a call or to email me, and I would be happy to speak to them. And something that Gerry had said at the very beginning, I'm just taking with me about being alert and being careful, and above all, though, moving together. That really touched my spirit when he talked about moving together, when you talked about that.
Okay, I'd just like to thank you again, all of you, for answering the call to come together at this time. And I feel that at this time we all come to the realization it's all about family and friends.
Yes.
What do we do with those family and friends? How do we support one another? As I was listening, I was thinking of one of my teachers, and one of his sayings was, Gerry, you must burn that canoe. and build a new one. That canoe has done its job now. So we'll burn it and we'll build a new one. And I was thinking of that, that's what we're going to do. And another elder says, you must remember that everything is in constant flux. That means everything is in constant change. It means our body, our mind, everything. So when we accept that, you know, that change is constant. And this is part of the change. You know, it's not pleasant. It's dangerous, in fact. And it's unpredictable. So unpredictable, we don't know. So we must accept that change too. So burn our canoe, you know, build a new one, accept that change is constant, and we're in it now. I shared with people, you know, crisis means turning point. And the question we ask ourselves, which way are we going to turn? We're going to turn towards personal growth, development, harmony, serenity, all those beautiful things. Or are we going to turn towards worry? And I was thinking about this because other groups I work with were creating messages for youth, and which are in government, you know, from puberty to 25 years of age, you know, is how they identify youth. So we're figuring out messages for them, the team I work with. And one of the thoughts that come to me is that to create this positive mindset, because it seems to be this society is looking for mistakes all the time. And it's an adversarial society, and you look at our governance system, NDP guys, if they're not in, they're attacking the ones that are in. Or if it's liberals or whatever, you know. So it's not a work together situation, it's adversarial.
Yeah.
So the new norm, I would say, let's make it where we work together. Let's put our minds together, like one of the famous indigenous philosophers, Sitting Bull, says, let's put our minds together to see what we can do for the children. And that's what I go by constantly. That's one of my mantras. Because a mantra is words that you say to yourself over and over and over again to protect yourself from negativity. And I was thinking of an example of this, how the society has developed majority of people to compare and contrast and to look for the mistakes rather than for the beauty. And I was down in the United States in the Navajo territory, and I listened to this elder. And he says, we believe in the beauty way of life. You create beauty in front of you, behind you, beside you, above you, below you, and beauty. You're working at every day. So when you get into it tomorrow and you look behind, what do you see? But beauty. And you look at the last year, what do you see? Beauty, because you created it with your friends and your family. So that's what I say we're gonna, if we can go back to the teachings that come out of the earth here. And that's one of the teachings about the beauty way of life. And the other one is to burn your canoe. Don't become attached, but think of, I'm gonna even improve it. You know, like that's what I've been saying. You know, when I get to the other side of this virus, I'm gonna be stronger in mind and body and spirit. You know, and that's, I've become committed to that. I've been committed to that. I admit I gave up a bit, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks into this virus, you know, being shut down. You know, the stress that comes from the unknown. I said, this is no surprise. I always don't know. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I have no idea about next year. What I know is today. And that's what I want to go by. So I just want to thank you. I know, you know, those are the thoughts been floating around my noggin, you know, and when I contribute to, you know, how do we fix ourselves during this time? You know, how do we stay strong? Another thing I always remember is that there are people relying on me. And those are all my relatives, all of the children. Because they're not going to create things as little children. They just live and exist. What am I going to do to guarantee them that they have a tomorrow? That's my responsibility as an adult, as an elder. Those ones are relying on us. Those ones that don't know how to plant a garden or keep it alive. They simply eat, and live. That's a beautiful part. Someone was saying, don't you wish that baby? I wish that my little babies would always be nestled against me, cooing in my ear. And they grow up to be these answer-back teenagers. They say, no, I wanted you to be just a cute little baby. And I tell you something, you smile. And you kiss me and you pull my ears. That's what I want all the time. Which is not possible. So I'd like to finish off with a song. And I got my papechla with me. It's a frog. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey yo, hey, hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey yo, hey. Hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, 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 oh, hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, yo, oh. Hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, oh, hey yo, hey yo, Spring is in Manitoba. No more snow, no more ice, and the frogs are singing. That's a good sign.
Oh.
That song I was singing is a wedding song.
Oh.
So I was singing it so all of our children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren will have weddings. And they'll have unions. And we're going to leave that, what we call the normal, behind us. That normal wasn't too good. We weren't taking care of Mother Earth. We were leaving people isolated. We're allowing people to be homeless. We're allowing women to be beaten and murdered. That norm wasn't good. When I look back and I say, I don't want that norm with me tomorrow. There's lots of beautiful things back there too. Oh, I went to ice park events, all over the province of British Columbia. It were beautiful to see people moving together, doing things together. That's a good norm. That's what I want tomorrow. The other stuff, let's burn that. Let's build a new canoe. Let's make it canoe that holds everybody. Elders, handicapped, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, pagans, everybody. None of this othering stuff anymore. No more racism, no more ageism, none of those isms. That's a norm I want, tomorrow. I don't know if I'll see it, but that's my dream. And I dream of we're actually, before this pandemic hit us, we're all pretty fat cats, Never go hungry in Canada. Even if I didn't get a job, I wouldn't have to worry somebody would feed me. Other places, people are fighting for food, fighting for water. So we had it pretty good here. But I think there's critical elements that we're missing. we're going to make that word justice come to full life. Because the actual meaning of justice means absolute fairness for all. That's going to be the new norm. Absolute fairness for all. We have times to talk about that now, and to meditate on that. And when it becomes us, we exude that. So when we go out and about and we see something, it's not that. We say, hey, that's yesterday's norm. We don't do that here. You know, I think like that. In 1976, me and my friends were walking around saying, by the year 2000, all Indigenous people are going to be alcohol and drug free, because I was an addictions worker. We failed miserably, but we're happy doing it. You know, we're singing songs, reviving our culture and our ceremonies and doing stuff like that. You know, that's the way, anyway, that's the way Gerry's built, and that's the way he moves. So good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. G, Gerry, for all of us at iSpark. Have a good week, and don't forget to send in any questions or concerns you might have, and we will happily address them. Dr. G will address them, and we'll support one another and continue to stay safe and strong and positive. We can do it. Bye for now.
Peace and out.
Peace and out.
says